new set once again. Yes, I'll keep changing until I find the perfect spot to record these videos because I'm still not satisfied. I don't even know if I'll do it like this next week, but welcome all the same. I hope you've managed to catch last week's videos, the 11 reasons to consider when you want to get to the ready-to-wear space. Today we get deeper. So I guess welcome and let's start. Hi, welcome everybody. I hope you've been well. I hope you've managed to catch up with last week's video where I basically gave you an overview of why you should consider making ready-to-wear clothes. Today we're going to get a bit deeper where I will explain more about the process, which I have split into the next 3 weeks. So today specifically we're going to talk about the design process, basically doing research. As much as you want to create your own collection, there are some aspects you need to think about. Using croquis, I know that term sounds strange, but I will explain about using croquis, and then also technical sketches. Basically I'll build up more on the technical sketches next week, but I just thought that today I'll take you slowly so that if you're actually doing this as I am talking, it might help give you time to be able to implement some of these things before the next week. So let's begin with the research process. Welcome. So like last week, I will get into slide form, but I wanted to explain a bit more about the research phase. I know I mentioned research in last week's video where I explained about researching if you get into the ready-to-wear space. So this research is a bit different because it's more about your collection, knowing about what is trending, like style-wise. Because I am assuming you've done the research for who your customer is, then you probably know what they like wearing at this time. Maybe last season they were wearing bell-bottom trousers and now they're wearing pencil skirts kind of thing. So you're supposed to make your ready-to-wear collection in line with what is popular, trending at the time, with a twist and a signature of your own style. So I'm going to get deeper into those details in the slides, but I thought I want to explain researching your collection, what it looks like. It involves things like mood boards. I'm sure some of you have heard of mood boards. It involves things like checking what styles are trending. Could be flared sleeves, could be cap sleeves, could be any of things like that. Could even be color. Maybe there's a color that's more popular there than now, especially if you want to get into the global retail space. Trends are very important, but it's not a must. You don't have to follow trends to the T. You can actually just be aware of the trend, because if you decide that you're going to sell your collection to buyers, they might be more interested in getting things that will trend, that will move fast. But if you're about creating your brand and you want your signature to be sold and everything, you have to really focus on building that community that will always buy your products because they like your style. So it goes back to the research phase for last week, where you understand who your customer is. Your customer is not only wearing your clothes, they're also wearing other people's clothes, and they are selling, and people are selling those clothes. So maybe you need to know what styles they are making that is doing well, and maybe you can come up with your own signature of that style. So basically just be aware of it. I will show clips of my own work in this video, how I came up with a silhouette. The silhouette, basically silhouette means shape, that I decided to work with in this specific ready-to-wear collection was one that was free-flowing and not too free-flowing, because I have had customers before complaining about a dress being too wide. In Kenya, we really don't like very free clothes. We like free clothes but tapered to your body. So you will notice that my clothes have a similar shape but with different detail. So I decided to focus more on the silhouette more than the color and stuff like, because I was using kanga. I decided I would use kanga as the inspiration from Kenya, because in Kenya we really do not follow color trends. We go with whatever color we like. So I was still trying to make it very Kenyan. But the silhouette I wanted, and I'll show you in the video, I wanted it to be able to fit a diverse range of women. Maybe you'll see that more next week, but I wanted to explain my design process this week so that next week when you see it on the actual model, because I have footages of that, then you'll understand. Because of the pandemic, because it was really inspired by the pandemic, I wanted a dress where if you lose weight or gain weight, it will still fit you and you'll still be comfortable. And because people were very careful with how they were spending their money during the pandemic, I wanted the dress to be that versatile. Good enough for a Zoom meeting. You can be able to go out when you can be able to go out. It can fit you whether or not you added weight and all kind of things like that. I also did consider people who had babies. Let's not assume there was a baby boom during the pandemic. So I did front zippers specifically because I knew someone would be able to wear the dress through their pregnancy and still be able to breastfeed their children. I really did put a lot of thought towards this collection, and I also ensured that it was fun, it was beautiful, it was still something I would still want to wear. It would suit a diverse range of sizes, and it could be worn in different ways, and I wanted it to be also at a price that was friendly. So I know I've said a lot, but it took me almost a year to come up with this collection, and even another year to buy the fabric, because with ready to wear, one of the main things you should always think about is if that fabric is available way after your collection has been produced. So for me, the fabric I used, unfortunately, was very limited. I used it anyway because I liked it, but if I have to produce, like now, as I had mentioned, I'm going to be producing for Shop Zetu coming soon. I'll alert you when it's out, the collection. I have to really think about getting way more fabric, and that it can be able to create multiple sizes. So I basically need to buy fabric in bulk. That's what I'm trying to say. And one of the things I can tell you that eats my mind is that it has to stick to my signature, which is color and print. And sometimes it's very hard to have a print that you can continue getting, especially if you're using African print fabrics. So those are some of the things you actually have to think about when you're creating a collection, because there are some retailers that are very strict. They have minimums of maybe 1,000 pieces per size. It could even be 1,000 pieces as a whole collection. In Kenya, it's a bit more flexible. The retailers will not ask you for that much, but if you're looking for global, it could be up to that much. So you have to really think about your fabric. It's one of the things that can really let you down if you're in Kenya, because we don't really produce fabric for individual companies. I think it's produced for masses, or if you're making uniforms or stuff like that, but it's very difficult to get print in mass. So think about that. Think about your sizing very well, which I'll get more into next week. But this research phase, as you've heard, you have to really think about your customer. You have to think about what they are going through. You have to think about what they are doing. You have to think about their life. You have to think about where they shop, because where they shop will inform where you will put your clothes to be bought. So this research phase, it can take way longer than I'm making it sound. For me, because I've already gone through this process, I am rushing through it. So just to inform you, but don't rush your research phase. It's very important, because you want to make money in the end. You don't want to spend a lot of money, and do your costing. The transportation you use from getting the fabric to your door is a cost. Sketching is a cost. Cutting is a cost. Making patterns, every process is a cost, including the design phase. So just try and cost everything. You don't have to make it so expensive. Example, if you decide, because you always have to think about cost from the very beginning. If you decide you're making a skirt and you've sketched it and it's a circular skirt, and you make the patterns, you could decide your skirt design process is 1,000 shillings, and then you can decide the pattern process is 3,000 shillings. You just take that price, and maybe you're making 1,000 units, so that means it's 4,000 shillings, and you're making 1,000 units. You divide the 4,000 by 1,000, and then you end up with the price of, I guess, 4 shillings per skirt. Just you put it in every cost. So putting down those costs is very important, because you will probably average it out and put it in each individual outfit to cover your costs. Cover all your costs. I know I have not gotten into the nitty-gritty details of the costs, but that's just an example for you to always think about every cost You have to think about the transport. If you have to give transport to your tailor, you have to cost that in. Your own transport to the workshop. Always write down each and every cost, because you need to put it to the outfit so that you don't undersell yourself and you don't end up not making money. Because I think sometimes the problem is we don't cost every process, including the sketching, the drafting and all that, especially for people like me who do it on our own. Sometimes it's very easy to overlook that cost because you need to hire someone to do it. So you're supposed to price it like you hired someone to do it, and then you put in that cost, or how much it would cost for you to hire someone to do it, because eventually when you become bigger you'll have to hire someone to do that job. So I hope I've made sense about the research, and I'm going to get into the slides now, and I'll see you at the end of the video. Target audience is very important to factor in when you're deciding what you're going to design and who you're designing for. So for example, let's say you're targeting teenagers and you live in Kenya, and majority teenagers do not actually buy clothes. They need to depend on their parents. So you will need to factor in, where do parents buy clothes for their teenagers? And then you would narrow it down to shops like Mr. Price and all that. Then once you've narrowed down to something like a shop like Mr. Price, then you would consider something like, what is the price point parents are willing to spend on their teenagers? Because teenagers spend most of their time in school uniform. It doesn't make sense to make the clothes very expensive, because a parent can easily pass on it and go for maybe secondhand clothes or something like that. So you need to make it affordable, and it needs to be in a place where a teenager can also access, because they are at that age where they're trying to figure out their style, and maybe they do have access to pocket money. So you will need to consider that. And then you'll also probably need to consider what is trending, because teenagers tend to follow trends more than adults. So they will be looking up to their pop stars, what they're wearing, what's trending, because they want to really be in with fashion. So that's a very good example of how to think about your target audience. And also not forget people who also sell to teenagers, how much do their things cost and how similar or different are your things to theirs. Continuing with the theme for making clothes for teenagers, then I will think about the type of clothes that maybe you're trying to design for this teenager. Maybe you want to make clothes specifically for a special occasion they're going. Maybe they're going for a wedding, so you want to make it more formal, or it's streetwear when they're going out with their friends, or something in between that they can go to church with or other family events with. So generally, whatever type of clothes you're making, you should consider the gender of the people you're making for, whether it's men, women, kids, or even these days, unisex clothes become very popular, where they're clothes that can be worn by either men or women. So the type of clothes that you're designing also matter when you come up with your collection. Next, we have trends, and of course, this basically is what's popular at the moment, what styles are popular, what shapes are popular. Maybe baggy trousers are popular, maybe the style with rivets is more popular, maybe black is a popular color. Those are the things you'd consider when you're designing. And of course, don't forget, you're keeping in mind the target audience. So if we go back to the theme of the teenager, maybe a more rock and roll style is popular, or hip hop. You need to know what is inspiring them. So if it's for older people, maybe this is somebody who doesn't really follow trends because they are working. So maybe they go to the office a lot, so they just want something practical for the office, but they also want it to have a new style. Maybe it fits them better, or it's a more flared skirt at the bottom. So sometimes it's important to check trends, and sometimes trends are not very practical for your everyday life. So you can borrow inspiration from a past trend or even a current trend and add it to be more practical for your client, depending on who you've targeted. Once you've looked at all the trends and basically just gotten ideas of what you want, it's always important to put them on a mood board. A mood board basically will help you come up with a vision for what you want in your collection. So all ideas you have, you put them there. Even if you have cuttings of fabric you like, or pictures of people's collection you like, different ideas you can get from magazines, from nature, from whatever it is that usually inspires you, you put them on a board, and You can see some of the examples there where there's some color inspiration, some inspiration is from movement, some inspiration is from buildings. Sometimes a shape can inspire you. There are very many ways of coming up with a creative collection. So a mood board is definitely a good way. You can do it digitally, you can do it on a physical board on your wall. There are very many ways people do mood boards. I personally prefer to use Pinterest as a way to save the ideas I like and the things I like. I also use Canva a lot to create my final mood board inspiration. So this is where you put anything that is, it could even be a flower petal that's carved that will remind you of a woman's body or something, just an idea. So mood boards are definitely something you should look into. Sketching is the next part of the process. After you have come up with your mood board, you can come up with as many sketches as you want, whether it's for men, women, kids. Do think about sketching your model in a way that it represents your customer. Like if your customer is plus size, try and make the model plus size. If your customer is short, you can make the model short and all that. This is just to help you visualize. And if you do have a software that can do your sketches in 3D, that's even better to help you visualize more. Also keep in mind how your customer looks. Is it a fair skinned person? Is it a dark skinned person? Is it someone with long hair, short hair? All those things usually help you really visualize and figure out who your customer is and how the outfit will look, because all the ideas you sketch will eventually eliminate them, but this is just for you to put down all your ideas. Next, you would choose your fabric. Choosing fabric means you could choose something locally available or something you have to import. There are actually websites where you can actually buy fabrics online. I haven't used them to buy fabrics. I've used online shops to buy other things, but it's very important for you to know how a fabric feels, looks, the care and everything, and you have to keep all that in mind even as you are designing your clothes. This process can actually even make you eliminate some designs, because sometimes the fabric that you need to do certain designs might cost more or have a longer process. So it's always important to check the fabric you've picked, how available it is, because that would also play a factor. If it's not available, then and you might get a lot of orders for that design, it might not be worth it. So this is definitely not an emotional decision, but a very crucial business decision. Next thing to consider is cost of production. Basically, you are supposed to think about all the costs involved in making the outfit. And I know I've listed some on this slide, but there are way more than this. You have to consider fuel, maybe machinery maintenance, maybe utility costs, feeding your tailor and all that. All those actually get into production costs, because they are basically helping you with the day-to-day running of your production facility. So when you are thinking about your production, you have to factor in all the costs. And once you've at least narrowed it down to one unit cost, one garment, then you could see how possible it is to make multiple of the same garment. And the truth is, generally, the more you make, the lower the cost of production goes, because all those factors I had said earlier would be split into all those items you are making. Also, the time you take to make something needs to be considered, because that's part of the cost of production. If it takes a long time for a tailor to make one garment, that could also get into cost of production. So basically, you're supposed to come up with practically a minute by minute cost of production. So people do it differently. So this is just to make you aware of how deep you should go, and especially if you're doing it on your own. If you're outsourcing, that's a totally different ballgame, but this is especially if you want to cost it in your own production facility. The production process is closely linked to cost of production, because there could be additional steps that you need to consider that will probably be factored into the cost of production. So things like leather that needs extra treatment, or a fabric that needs to be pre-shrunk, because generally it shrinks after you have washed it. So maybe it needs to be washed first before it's used. Things like that would be factored into the cost of production. So this would definitely help you even know what target market you should be aiming for. Maybe it's not going to be a mass market product. If your fabric has additional steps, maybe it will be more niche. So maybe there are additional things to add, like beading or adding details on your outfit that usually are not there in other mass market products. So that's something else to consider, your production process. In simple terms, croquis are basically rough sketches. So usually I have this model, as you can see in these images that I just got online, and they have segmentations, and they have male, female, kids, teenagers, and basically what you do is you draw in your design on these croquis. And the croquis can just be a human figure standing straight or having movement. They're usually just supposed to make your sketching process go faster so that you don't have to spend a lot of time sketching. So the whole point is this is supposed to just make your life easier. You don't have to always draw from scratch when you're designing clothes. You can use croquis and just move on to the next phase of designing. So these, the ones with movement, of course, you can use it for your fashion sketches at the beginning stage that I had mentioned earlier. And then now you also need to design your flats, and that is the next one that I'm showing you. Technical sketches are an equivalent of a blueprint of an outfit. Basically, what factories use when you're drawing it, you draw it like you've put the garment flat. So they're also called technical flats or fashion flats. Basically, like what your outfit looks like when it's laying flat. So these sketches are very important because you're supposed to mark out the little details that you want on the garment, whether you want some top stitching on it or you want some buttons on it or a zip on it. You draw very technical sketches. These last two slides are my technical sketches for my work. The designs are pretty simple, that's why you're not seeing a lot of details on them. And for the last slide, you can see that I've even placed them on top of the fabrics I intend to use them for. And I would probably not give it to a factory like this. I'd add more details, but I'll get more into all that next week when we are looking at fashion flats and line sheets and all those. I hope that was helpful. And next week, I'm definitely getting more into the nitty-gritties of technical sketches, especially if you're going to outsource to a factory, or even just for your own records, to have good records of your patterns and the sizes that you're doing and everything like that. You have to decide all those things beforehand. And once again, I'll just emphasize, you need to know basically how much money you will make at the beginning stage of this whole process. It's not something you decide at the end, it's something you decide at the beginning, from the time you're even picking your fabric to the time you figure out that you want this big balloon sleeve and it takes a whole meter of fabric by itself. So costing is something you should always have in mind every single time you are planning, researching, doing your ready-to-wear collection, because it really does come down to the smallest amount of money. And also not to forget that if you are using another retailer, they take a percentage of that money, and the amount varies. Even if you have your own shop and you're putting it in your ready-to-wear shop, you have other costs now: rent, salaries, taxes, of course, there's so many other costs. So costing from the very beginning, you really have to check. And also you need to check if you're going to be a mass market brand where your margins are very small and you just want to sell a lot, or a more exclusive brand where your margins are a bit bigger and you sell slowly but they still sell. And yeah, the more details you add on an outfit, the more it will cost. Just how it is. So I hope this has been helpful, and I guess I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching till the end. Bye!